Hey everyone, this is Marika from Hemisphere, and today I'm just doing a follow-up video in regards to the survey that I did a couple of weeks ago about pelvic organ prolapse. One of the questions I asked was, what strategies have you found to be most helpful in dealing with your pelvic organ prolapse? And I just wanted to read some of the responses so that you can get an idea of some of the things that women have found to be the most helpful in dealing with some of the symptoms of prolapse. So just keep in mind that I didn't direct any of these responses. These are ones that just came off the cuff from the people who responded. And I'm going to read them in order of the ones that were mentioned most frequently. So the ones that more people found were helpful. So number one on the list, I'm going to read the top 10. Number one on the list was breathing changes. So many women found that changing their breathing pattern actually helped with their symptoms of prolapse. Some women went into a little bit more detail about that, like not holding their breath or using an exhale on exertion or using some of Julie Weeb's strategies like blow before you go or hyperpressives and other things. So there were a few different ways of approaching this, but definitely changing breathing patterns seemed to be number one on the list. The number two, and not far behind breathing changes, was postural changes or postural awareness. And again, some women went into a little bit more detail about talking about how if they stacked their ribs over their pelvis, they felt better, or if they just changed their posture when lifting up their baby, they had less symptoms, or adapting their posture when they did weights in the gym. So posture or alignment seemed to be a really effective strategy for many women. The number three on the list was regular exercise of a low impact variety. So this might have been walking, swimming, cycling, doing low impact aerobic exercise. Some women specifically mentioned online programs such as Dr. Sarah Duvall or Mutu or just other online programs that they use that were specifically designed for postnatal women. So yeah, regular exercise certainly made a lot of women feel better, which was really lovely for me to see as someone who's very keen on getting women with pelvic organ prolapse to do some kind of exercise. So that might have meant that they felt better in terms of less symptoms, but also just better overall mentally and physically from having the outlet of doing regular exercise. So that was number three. Number four on the list, where are we? Oh, bowel management. So this was huge. So many women mentioned some women mentioned splinting. So actually inserting the finger to push, obviously for more of a rectocele, so push the posterior wall prolapse back so that they get better exit of the fecal contents. Other women talked about, just not straining when they're going to the toilet. Many women mentioned constipation and just said they had to avoid constipation at all costs because whenever they got constipated, they felt worse in terms of their prolapse symptoms. So bowel management was really frequently mentioned. So that was number four. A little bit lower down the list, and it might surprise some people, was pelvic floor strengthening exercises. So many women did mention that they did specific pelvic floor strengthening training. Some did that via their physical therapist. Some used devices, but on the whole, it just seemed to be a home exercise program of doing frequent pelvic floor strengthening. And this would be looking at obviously building up pelvic floor muscle bulk to actually give more support to the prolapse, but probably also working on some of those timing issues as well, so that we want the pelvic floor to kick in when we're doing certain exercises or activities of daily living. So that was number five. Interestingly, number six was pelvic floor muscle relaxation. So a lot of women actually found that they were more symptomatic when they were clenching, so using too much and too frequent pelvic floor activation. So many women actually mentioned that doing specific pelvic floor muscle relaxation training that they learnt from their physical therapist, what is also known as down training. Some other women just found doing more sort of yoga meditation or stress relief. Any of those kind of strategies were really helpful in relieving the symptoms of pelvic organ prolapse. So that was number six. Following on from that, and very much related, was rest. Many women did mention that having regular rest was helpful, and certainly I know from my clients, especially in those early postnatal months, with with pelvic organ prolapse, many women find that actually just having a bit of downtime during the day, so maybe just lying down to rest in the middle of the day and then having a bit of rest at the end of the day as well, can help. And that's just that effect of gravity acting down onto those internal organs coming down onto the pelvic floor. So rest can be really helpful for symptomatic relief. Number 8 was pessaries. So a pessary is a device that women can insert, which can help support the internal organs. There's many different types. There's rings and cubes and Gellhorns and all sorts of things. And often they will be fitted by a gynecologist or by a pelvic health physiotherapist. And there are some that stay in for long periods of time and some that you can put in and take out and you can just use for exercise, for example. But they need to be fitted professionally and they need to be monitored regularly to make sure that the tissues do not start to get damaged from that. Number 9, intra-abdominal pressure modifications. This probably sits in again with number 1, which is the breathing changes, and maybe even number 2, the postural changes. It kind of all sits in there. But, a large number of women actually specifically mentioned intra-abdominal pressure, so changes in pressure. So thinking about not bearing down into that pelvic floor, avoiding breath holding with exercise, avoiding the Valsalva maneuver, for example. So there are lots of things that we can do in exercise to change the strategies and change the intra-abdominal pressure. And certainly as physical therapists, that's what we try and do in how we teach return to exercise after baby and return to exercise with pelvic organ prolapse or diastasis recti or hernia. Okay. And number 10, which again kind of goes back to the rest, was actually reducing stress and increasing general relaxation. So a lot of women found that, and we're talking more psychological stress here and emotional stress, when women were more anxious, when they were more stressed, especially with sleep deprivation or maybe a baby that doesn't feed well, or maybe you've had a traumatic birth, all of these things that add to that stressful, that mental stress load will actually tend to increase symptoms. So many women mention that reducing their stress actually helped with their symptoms as well. All right, so they were the top 10 that came up onto my list. A few other ones I'll just mention in here. Having a positive attitude about recovery, biomechanics, listening to the body, really important, reducing the amount of heavy lifting, sleep, gut health, and reducing impact exercise were all other ones that were mentioned, but mentioned to a lesser degree. So, and another one which was strengthening the body was actually meant, it just scraped in below the other ones, but strengthening the glutes and generally strengthening the body came up frequently on the list as well. And certainly I find that too. When women are stronger, they'll often feel less symptoms of the prolapse as well. They're getting more support through the rest of the body. So I'd love to hear what you guys think of this list, and if there's anything that you would add to it or any comments that you would make about it, please feel free to post below.